Welcome to it. Sunday Live is here with the Average Joe Sports Show. Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel. Bill Doleman, Gary Sharp rocking the Runza hat. Bill Doleman still in SEC country. Elijah is, are you in a forest or driveway?
En route back to Lincoln, but we have not made it out of Kansas City yet. The Airbnb booted us at 10, so I started making the trek back and over for this show because I couldn't miss a Sunday Live.
Okay. Good on you. And Chris Schmidt here reporting from the Cranack wedding. It was incredible. And we had a brush with greatness about 20 minutes ago where Snoop Dogg was checking in, getting a coffee. And I said, dude, do you still have that Crouch jersey from the 2001 concert at Pershing Auditorium? He was like, yeah, man, that was 100 years ago. I was like, I know, it was a great show. I went with Uncle Mark, but he took a picture. I conferred with a couple of dudes in line getting coffee. Is that really him? But it was. Snoop Dogg's a good dude, and he's I don't know if he's here for Giants Braves, but he could have saw a great one yesterday. Wow, it's been an adventure here in San Fran for the Cranack wedding. It's been a pleasant showcase, fellas, for Nebraska football and their recruiting weekend. Man, they're going all in on Ahmad Hudson. And Bill Doleman showing the picture of
that is a
Snoop
great shot.
And the asthma boy, as I just got texted by my wife.
I got now I'm seeing this on Snoop's Instagram. So I assume he posted it that he ran into Schmidt.
No,
he was doing a gig in a lobby, a hotel lobby apparently. So Snoop. By the way, my NBC Olympic colleague Snoop Dogg.
That's right. That's right.
He's doing San Francisco lobby gigs now. So, but yeah, this is on Snoop Dogg's Instagram. I'm pretty sure.
Sure.
Yeah, you know what? Did you ask him? Did you ask him where he got your outfit?
No, I did not. But he does the whole Snoop Lion thing, and I didn't get into wardrobe because I look like clearly I'm coming from the gym, but it was entertaining. It was pretty cool. And he had a few folks walk up, and he's just a happy dude where he's pleasant to take a picture, and he's used to it for sure. And it was weird being that guy. It was like, well, kind of need to see what he's doing. We've got a chair next to Sharpie and Doleman and Elijah. And I got the I'm busy, cuz, but thanks. So I tried.
Why couldn't Nebraska have gotten Snoop Goes to School instead of Tommy?
Yeah.
We would have been so much cooler in Lincoln.
Well, Snoop would have caught a felony charge in Lincoln in 2 minutes flat. So
yeah, Tommy. Yeah, the Snoop versus Tommy. That's a no contest. I know, but whatever. I remember doing the halftime update with Nebraska mauling Baylor in that 04 the 04 season. And that was the main footage of Tommy Lee Goes to School, where he was in the marching band, right? The one member of the marching band that had several neck tattoos.
You mean that's not a normal thing in the Nebraska marching band?
I have not.
They haven't gotten edgy?
I've not inventoried in a while. So,
but
no.
for the record, you did invite Snoop to be a guest on the Sunday Live Average Joe Sports Show.
I said, hey, bro, we're just doing because we're tight like that. It's like, Snoop, if you aren't busy hitting the Average Joe pod in about 15 minutes. So we'll see if he wanders down. Stay tuned.
Was he? Did he have a crew with him, or was he just solo?
He had a gal with him that I think was kind of an assistant, and then there was another dude with him that made sure he was set up and everything was okay. And I haven't looked. I don't know if he's doing a show here, if he's here for what. I haven't looked at the old Snoop Dogg website in quite a while, but I know that he remembered the show at Pershing. So
wow.
in 01. Yeah, that was pretty good. How about
I
old
don't
Spencer
remember.
Schwell?
I don't remember the shows that I went to at Pershing.
Well, that's fair. But I sent the picture to Uncle Mark because that's probably the last show Uncle Mark and I went to, and he was like, "No way!" So yeah, this was productive morning, and we've got another 50 minutes of fun to be had. But how about Spencer Schwellenbach? Yesterday, Little Cranack was at the field level. That's where the wedding reception was, and Schwelly was working out, doing some running, and a ball rolled over to Cranack's son, and Schwelly moseyed on over, and one of the wedding party down there shouted "Go Big Red," and then Spencer kind of grinned and came over, and then he signed a ball and gave it to Cranack's son, and
That's
just kind of
awesome.
chatted up the Nebraska contingent in right field. It was all good. And then our old buddy Ted, who we stayed with in Ireland, made about 2 minutes of TV where the San Francisco TV crew was hammering him. It looked like Ted, his back was towards the action. He was talking to the wonderful bride and Ted's wife, but the guy thought he was talking too much to the bride, the color analyst for San Francisco baseball, and then he for sure thought he was taking too much time with the lovely blonde woman in the blue dress, who is Ted's wife. But he's like, "Bub, grab some bench, and door window. The posting of it's hilarious. Ted couldn't believe it. It was hilarious to get painted in that picture of him not watching the baseball game. And then they cut right to him as the walk-off home run happened, and he's losing it because that was his first baseball game ever. And he was asking poor Schmidt to explain the rules of baseball to him. So I was right there with him. And he just was like, "Man, this is the hardest sport ever," because he's a big rugby guy, loves rugby. That's his thing, and has season tickets over there in Dublin for one of the rugby clubs. But yeah, he loved baseball. We may go again today. The get-in price is skyrocketing, unfortunately.
So successful trip has been had by all.
I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe so. I know we need to get to some shout outs. I know we need to talk some weekend recruiting. Elijah, how was your bachelor party, dude? Or how was any igloo coolers being poured over like a trip to Tempe not long ago?
No, I did have some concerns last night because the umpiring association wanted to know if I could work a doubleheader in Seward today.
Crank your volume a little, partner, if you could.
Can do, but yeah, I was.
Now
Gotta
you're
get
muted.
the other way.
Now you're muted.
This is where he's swearing.
Yeah.
So we have to mute him.
Yeah. Right.
Now you're gone.
Yep.
Reconnect.
But what is impressive though is that Elijah does have his seat belt buckled in a non-moving vehicle. So good safety tip for the average Joes, Janes, and Joey's out there that always have your seatbelt buckled, even if the car is not moving.
Try again.
Better now?
Yes.
Better now.
Just talk loudly.
I will talk loudly. Is that okay? Projecting my voice here. No, good bachelor party. Was concerned I might have to go umpire some baseball today. We got it sorted out. I'm not sure I would have given the best performance for those high schoolers out there on a day like today, but rocking and rolling through. We're happy for Will. The wedding is coming up here in August, so looking forward to that. Now it's looking forward to 3 hours behind the wheel after we finish up the show.
Is there a steam room in your future?
Probably not. Maybe a walk whenever I get back.
Yeah, that works. Guys, what'd you think of the weekend, Nebraska-wise?
I mean, I think from all reports, it went exactly like they wanted it to. Now they just need some people to say yes. But I think, we've always talked about Micah Parsons in 2017, like being the Friday Night Lights. And that was an incredible Friday Night Lights. I remember Micah Parsons, but also Ryan Clark was there because his son was part of Friday Night Lights. And there was an abundance. Remember all the great defensive backs in that time period that Riley was recruiting? They were all there from like Chase Goodrich on down. I think probably Ahmad Hudson is probably going to be one of those guys that gets mentioned along with Micah Parsons. I mean, what an incredible weekend. What a great weekend for the kid. He comes to Nebraska and leaves with a football and basketball offer. I mean, that doesn't happen very often. I mean, not everybody is Donovan McNabb, who ironically, his son was also in Lincoln this weekend.
Oh, was Danny here also in Lincoln to say, you got to pick one sport, son?
That is a great what if. What if Donovan McNabb would have committed to Nebraska, what that would have done to who was coming to Nebraska at the time. But I don't know, it sounds like a great weekend. Maybe I believe that this is the weekend that benefits Nebraska down the road, maybe not right now. But what is, has any coach at Nebraska never said, man, if we get him to campus, they're going to see this place sucks. Like every coach goes, let's just get him to Lincoln. Once we get him to Lincoln, we'll show him. And now the new facilities, we've got a shot. And I think that's all that Nebraska wanted is they got a shot and they got some exposure and they got some face time with some big time prospects. And we'll see what happens. But what a great weekend for Nebraska in a month that they probably need a couple of wins. They probably need one or two where you go, okay, Nebraska beat blank big boy school that's known for their defensive lineman or offensive lineman to get this guy, or they just continue to add to, their skill positions. They've done a good job of recruiting skill positions of late.
But the question is, when will those wins come? If we're talking about recruits that are, I'm sure there were some 26s there. I think Dayton was there, but when will you know if you get that one or two wins after the weekend that Nebraska had, which by all accounts has had glowing reviews, both locally and nationally. It's been talked about what Nebraska did with its 7-on-7 camp on all of the prominent media services. So is somebody going to get home to Miami, Indy, LA, wherever it is, and say, I'm going to go there, or Nebraska is now, and not just one win, you might have to have a half dozen or more, a dozen, that Nebraska is now in their Final Four, so that it's at least talked about that Nebraska's on the radar of the highly coveted recruits for the classes of maybe 26, but probably 27 and 28. So when will that win come? When will the fruits of some kid saying, I went to the 7-on-7 camp at Nebraska 2 years ago prior to my junior year. Now I'm in. You would like to see some momentum out from somebody who said, what, that's exactly what I'm looking for. And I'm with the Trey Taylor and whoever else was enamored with Nebraska. And I'm in right now, going in to my junior year of high school. Yeah. And I'll see you, Lincoln, in 2028 or 29 when they fit me for my Adidas uniform that they promised me because Adidas' name is on the deal. So that's the question. Yeah, by all accounts, the reviews were phenomenal and everything went well. But when will Nebraska know where and who is going to give them that win?
It does come down to not being the bridesmaid on this for Nebraska. And to do that, it is going to be not just a wow win, like, oh, cool. Think about Riley. Riley beat a playoff-bound Michigan State. Crazy night in Lincoln. That was a big win. You follow it up with what, right? You need to stack some wow moments. You need one to break through to get over and have that signature win for sure. Here he comes, walking out the door. See, well, here he is. So,
Snoop coming back?
Well, we'll see. So, yeah.
I want to add one more thing. It's not just wins that I think these recruits want to see, and wins are big. Guys want to go off to college and go be national contenders. That's a fact. But guys also want to be turned into future draft picks. They want to be turned into future Pro Bowlers. Guys that can go to the NFL and make a lot of money, because NIL money is nice, but NFL money is different. That's what they're truly looking for at the end of the day. These guys want to go see, I mean, can Dylan Raiola turn into a guy who's going to be projected as a first-round pick? Are there guys on this team that can go be second and third-round picks, even first-round picks in next year's NFL draft? These are the things these guys are looking for, too, because while you also need wins, at the end of the day, these guys are football players, and they want to go play in the NFL. They want to go fulfill their dreams. Is Nebraska the place that can get them to the next level? That's another thing that they're going to need to go see, some high-level draft picks, some guys that go to the NFL and go compete and go play well.
And these guys are potential draft picks in 2031. I mean,
I know.
That's how far down the line we are on these guys making, their final four lists and then making their commitment. Unless Taylor is, works as hard as Dylan Raiola does, because I think we've all been kind of impressed with the way Dylan peer recruits. And let's face it, Nebraska encourages him. With the amount of money that he's making, Nebraska utilizes Dylan's name, image, and likeness to peer recruit. And if Trey Taylor is that kind of guy, we've never heard that about like a TJ Lateef. We don't hear that about Dayton, but that has been something that's been talked about with Trey Taylor since he made his decision that he was going to be actively peer recruiting. That phrase has been more attached to Trey Taylor than anybody else that Nebraska has gotten a commitment from the last couple of years since Dylan signed on the dotted line. So how much peer recruiting can be done in the follow-up of this event? I still think Nebraska is 2 years away from and granted, Ohio State and Penn State and all these other schools have the wherewithal to do what Nebraska did. But in terms of staying ahead of the rest of the country, before everybody catches up, Nebraska's got like a 2-year head start with this battle in the boneyard concept, the corporate involvement, the corporate investment. So that 26, 27, 28 could be the most fruitful years for Nebraska based on what they did this weekend. Because everybody else is going to do it. Yeah. Everybody else is going to do it.
You got a timeline to flip it, is what you got. You're awesome. Say hi to the fellas if you want. No. Brandy says hello, Peterson. So
she is missed. Tell her husband, by the way, congratulations. Great high school baseball season.
Congrats from Sharpie to BP on the state championship. Yeah. So, but he's back in line. So
also, you know what the thing that this is, we're living vicariously through you, Schmitty, because I don't know if people can see this. So you're in a town that's got, I think more than any other U.S. city, these self-driving cars.
Yes. There's been a couple
that have gone behind you.
I
would highly advise getting in one.
Might have to. Some of the folks in the wedding party have and did. They took whatever the hell it's called to Golden Gate Bridge. I haven't quite decided what I'm doing today, but it's probably a baseball game versus touring the sites. But just a thought here on the recruiting part. So let's put this list down, right? It's go get a big win, go get a couple of big wins. The guys that help give you those big wins go off to the NFL and perform while being drafted pretty highly, and then just keep doing it. And you have about a 2-year window to do it, and it's accelerated, i.e. Indiana, because you can go fix your roster problems if you pick correctly and spend correctly and developed correctly. But I think all of this is completely understood. You've got a board. You have the understanding that, you're the pitch being you're somebody that can help get us or help sustain us at a certain level we want to be at, a playoff contender. And good on Nebraska. And I like the fact that Rule and Freddie Ballgame, clearly you want great talent to go help win ball games, but you joined forces, and your impression will go. It needs to go from, man, Nebraska is an amazing place. They put on a great show. Man, I really like some of the kids that'll be in this class with me, man, I really like the coaching staff and the time they gave me and how direct they were. But it's going to go from all those things that check boxes to, oh, and they win or they're a contender. I mean, that's the missing part of this. And you've got Hudson right now who will next visit Ohio State because they get guys like Hudson all the time and they perform and then they get drafted in the first round. And then he's off to LSU on June 20th. I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean, can Nebraska beat, and I don't know much about Hudson other than the guy's a freak show in a great way, but is LSU that squad that is he a kid who wants to stay home or does he want to go somewhere else? I don't know.
Yeah, who knows after this weekend? I mean, people's mind change. But again, we're dealing with teenagers, and is it the last school they're at or the school that that wows them the most? I don't know. I think Nebraska's pitch is really good. They got to start winning. They got about a 2-year window to really break through, and then I think it just starts to churn. Another thing that is good for Nebraska is Nebraska's still paying attention to high school recruiting, and it's ironic because Nebraska had a really good portal haul, and I think you can make a case that there's going to be 11 guys out of this last year's portal that could start at some point a football game this year. But while everybody else is talking about the portal, Rule continues to reiterate that the heart and soul of Nebraska football is the high school recruiting, and so events like this just keep pushing that point of, we're going to have to go into the portal, but at the end of the day, even with small classes, we're going to go and get our high school guys. So I think it's all about messaging. I'll think about framing, but getting that amount of face time. And then also, you think about it, they had some influencers that were on campus this weekend that are involved in 7-on-7. I mean, they had Nico's dad was here. Yeah. Whether you like the crap that he pulled with Tennessee to UCLA, he appears to have a loud voice in that world. And then you got Cam Newton that was here. So you have some mouthpieces for Nebraska, which I also think helps when kids are trying to pick the brain of, hey, where should I go? What do you think is the best fit for me? Which can help me get to the league, can do this, this, and this.
It goes back to getting them on campus. And what you mentioned earlier. Look, Matt Rule did that. Remember before he agreed to take the Nebraska job, he and his wife, Julie, made a trip out to Lincoln to see if it was all just cornfields. Right? They went on a recon trip and nobody recognized him, and they wanted to see for themselves what this place was all about. So they, in a sense, or he, in a sense, allowed all of these 7-on-7 players to come to Lincoln to do exactly what he did, look around, check the place out, see the facilities, understand that, well, granted, they didn't see 90,000 people at a football game, at a home football game, but they got the gist of that. So Matt Rule invited them to do what he did. Come to Nebraska, check it out. And it's high school recruiting, but I think we talked about it a little bit yesterday. I mean, this is probably recruiting for the portal for those kids who don't come here the first time around. If you're not happy playing football and basketball at LSU, remember your experience 3 years ago when you came to Nebraska for a weekend, how much you liked it. The door's still open for you. So there's recruiting now and there's recruiting later, and getting them a good idea of what life would be like in Lincoln. So they're transfer portal recruiting kids who haven't even played their junior year of college or high school football yet.
Well, let me ask you guys the question with Ahmad Hudson. I know you have to. I mean, after what we saw from Travis Hunter, people said, "Oh, you can't play both sides," and he does. So you have to kind of believe the guy. But how feasible is it? Do you guys actually think for him to both play basketball and football at the next level?
It's not been done in a while, and it's not been done at a high level. I mean, who's the last guy to do it? We've seen it. We've seen kids play baseball and football, but I mean, do you have to go to Antonio Gates?
Yeah, that's where I first went.
And
it's
Gates
just too hard.
But wasn't Gates basketball first, who also then played football?
Yeah. I don't know. I think because of the calendar now, it makes it even more difficult to pull a Noah Vedral or a Brant Banks or a Matt Davison or a Wilson Thomas.
Garth Glissman.
But Keith Newbert,
Yes.
he was another guy way back in the day. I think the calendar makes it awful tough. I think it's easier to pull off the football, baseball, but doing football, basketball at a high level, I mean, you're not going to join the team until what, January? So you got January, February, March, and then you have no time off. You go right back into football. It would be incredibly tough to pull off, but he appears to be a freak. And I think if you give him that option, that puts you, hey, we're going to take you over and introduce you to Coach Hoiberg today. At least puts in your mind, this is a school that would allow me to do both. They do that with wrestling. They in the recruitment of Nash, Frost's staff was like, yes, that will be something we can entertain if that's something you want to do. We have a great relationship with Mark Manning, but man, basketball, football combo would be really, really tough to pull off.
But don't you have to say yes?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You got to say, yeah. If you want to do it anymore, it's what do you want, kid? And whatever we can do to get you here. And if everybody signs off on it, then you almost have to absolutely allow them to give it a shot. So why not say, yeah, if you want to play football for 10 to the 12 months and basketball for 2, and that'll make you happy and make you a little extra NIL money one way or the other in your pocket or under the table with your Happy Meal, then go for it. We're here with open arms. Give it a shot. And let them determine whether or not they can or can't handle the workload.
In this list of guys that have done both at Nebraska, is Eric Strickland qualified? Remember, he went out for spring football for like a day. Yeah. I mean, he was an incredible athlete at Bellevue West. I mean, football and basketball. And he went out for a day, and I think he got hit or something, and he was like, not for me. Basketball is the way I'm going to go. So could he be on this list of the best basketball, football guys at Nebraska and maybe unseat Brant Banks?
I got to say no, because but it goes back to what I said. You want to try? Go ahead. We'll say yes to you. But and also that was a basketball player wanting to try football. It wasn't the other way around. But I'm going to say no on that. Maybe you put it lightly in pencil on the others receiving votes list. But I remember that day. I remember how long it lasted.
The old there's been a ton of influence over the years with basketball to football. And I know Bill Callahan liked big old power forwards that played basketball. And you've seen that kind of turn into a thing. Let's go get guys that play hoops that we can stick at left tackle. The big old 6'7", 6'5", giant wingspan fellas that have amazing feet and some quickness. And that's why so many coaches love multi-sport players, athletes. But basketball has worked out well for a lot of football programs selectively. Garth sent me a story, Glissman, about a kid that ended up getting drafted. He goes to Mississippi State. He's a mid-round draft pick, but he had just played basketball, and then he ended up doing football this past season for the Bulldogs as an offensive tackle. And purely out of projection and measurables, he ended up playing okay on a tough football team. But he ended up getting drafted, getting signed. So, it works out. But you don't turn it down. You still remember what could have been with Nebraska and Donovan McNabb. How would that quarterback room have worked? You go from Frazier to McNabb. McNabb stays at quarterback. You have Frost move to safety, and then you have Crouch come in. Is that how it goes?
I'm not sure one would have stayed.
So McNabb redshirted at Syracuse in '94, and then his first year was '95. I imagine that Frost doesn't transfer back to Nebraska. If you have Donovan McNabb quarterback in waiting,
he was awesome at Syracuse.
And then it actually probably would have. I mean, you probably don't get both Newcomb and Crouch. You probably get either one, and then Crouch or Newcomb starts in '99.
Yeah. And well, that was an ordeal. 99.
Well, I was thinking yesterday, you being out in the Bay Area, one of the worst football games that I've ever witnessed in person, and
Cal?
this list is length. Yes, the Cal game in '98 was a bad Division I football game.
It's 24-3, and you wanted it to end about the second quarter, didn't you?
But it was fun being in Berkeley. I mean, when you're walking to the stadium and there are
The
people that are
hills.
chained to the tree, or they are in the tree and they won't get out because they've spent a week protesting in Berkeley. Yeah, there was a tree right outside of the media entrance where there were like 4 people that had been chained to it for like 3 days. And I said,
That's
this stuff happens in
hilarious.
Lincoln. It's a normal day in Lincoln.
Chained to the tree.
That was a cool venue.
It was a great venue.
It was a beautiful day, as I recall, and it's an open air press box. Here's what I remember about that one, because I was fortunate to have been distracted from watching that game, even though I was hosting the Solich show. But I had gotten seated away from the majority of the media, and I was kind of in an area all by myself, except for a gentleman who was probably at that time in his late 80s or early 90s, who was seated, and it was just the two of us in this rather large section of press seats. And people kept coming over to dote on this guy. And I could look up his name, and I'm not going to take the time right now, but they kept doting on him. Are you okay, Mr. Smith? Are things going okay? Oh, well, it's great to see you again. And somehow we got into a conversation, and the name Al Davis had gotten brought up by somebody, or the Oakland Raiders or whatever. And he goes, yeah, I should have never sold that team to that son of a bitch. And I'm like, so he had been a part of the original Oakland Raiders ownership group that sold the team to Al Davis. So he was a small minority owner in it, but he was part of a group that owned the LA Raiders in the early 1960s or whatever it was.
Man.
And so now I become, interested in, well, what are some Al Davis stories you can tell me? And how did you become part owner of the Raiders, and da-da-da-da. Meanwhile, the game's going on. And then it comes, somebody says, do you know who you're sitting to? I said, no. And he said, well, ask him about the Olympics. Turns out that he's part of some 1936. I don't think it was the Berlin Olympics, but he's like an Olympic gold medalist rowing champion from the early 1930s, who he says, yeah, I've got a record that'll never be broken because they don't have the event anymore. So while you all were suffering through a mediocre Nebraska Cal game on a beautiful setting in Berkeley, I'm getting this history lesson from this guy who used to own the Raiders, sold them to Al Davis, told me about Al Davis, and competed in the Olympics in the 1930s. So that's my story from Berkeley.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to hit Berkeley or not today. Stanford. Again, just maybe ballpark.
That game, prior to the Notre Dame game a few years later, that was the most fans I'd seen at a visiting game.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there weren't a ton of people there that day, but I think somebody from Cal said there were 35,000 Nebraska fans that were at that game.
Yeah.
Crouch. Yeah. That was the first game where you went, man, Crouch, there's something different, because Newcomb got hurt at the beginning of that year. And so you had, everybody and his brother was playing quarterback to begin the 98 season. But that was like the game where you went, okay, Crouch has got something here. He's something special. Because he had he carried Nebraska to that win. Monte Cristo played pretty well, and I think Cristo was banged up a little bit as well, because he had pulled a muscle the week before in the bye week at a wedding dance in Kearney. True story.
Damn, the chicken dance.
Yeah, I was going to say, was it the chicken dance? Was it the hokey pokey? Was it the limbo? Man.
Twisted around in the Macarena. Like it happens.
Yeah, something. Yeah. God, you went Macarena on me this morning. Okay. I like it.
What do you guys think, as we talk about road games here, what is the road game to hit this year for Husker fans? I think the top 3 are Minnesota, Penn State, UCLA.
You're not counting Arrowhead?
That's pretty much a home game.
Yeah, okay.
That will be a home game. Well, that'll break the record for the most Nebraska fans at a road game.
Well, with as many Husker fans too that make the trek down to Kansas City every Sunday to go see the Chiefs anyway, that's a pretty familiar trip to a lot of folks that are going to make that trip down. So I'm taking that one off the list.
So we're all going to be in Minnesota, but I think that's fun. It's not gone Nebraska's way, but I think Minneapolis does it right. That stadium's fun and well set up. It's been incredible for us. The question is do we stay and hit Philly Vikings on Sunday?
Yes.
I guess it's no question.
Yes. The Rose Bowl, now that it's not going to be a Friday night, the Rose Bowl is okay, but it's not the Rose Bowl that you see on January 1.
Yeah.
I wonder though, do they take the tarps off the seats because it's Nebraska? Like when Iowa and Minnesota played out there last year, there were a lot of Iowa, Minnesota fans. There will be a ton of Nebraska fans. The Penn State game to me is wait and see. Like it's a difficult place to get to. And if you're not winning, it is a miserable place to be. But if you get to that bye week and Nebraska is competitive and you're like, okay, they're not going to go there and get curb stomped, that might be a last second. Let's go out to Eastern Pennsylvania.
So no, never.
You don't you don't want to drive up that little winding 2-lane highway through the hills of Pennsylvania when it's snowing outside, and you drive by that one house and they've got the familiar things in the mom and dad in the garden that are bent over. You see those, and then they've got their
the
mailbox
yard signs.
If the house has not changed in 25 years, they've got a picture of Paterno on their mailbox. There's no other homes for miles, but you drive by this one, and it's a huge estate. But they've got all this Penn State stuff, and then they've got gnomes in the garden in the front of the house, and then they've got these wooden caricatures of Ma and Pa, Pennsylvania, and Ma, Pennsylvania in a house dress is bent over, tending to the garden. How about drove off the road?
Well, it's an ice skating rink apparently on that winding 2-lane road to get in and get out. I won't ever go to Unhappy Valley. I just won't make that road trip. I've heard too many horror stories from Aaron Babcock and Brandon Vogel and the crew of where they had to land either Pittsburgh or Baltimore and then commute. I mean, it's just hell.
Flying into Pittsburgh and driving across the state is there's some picturesque areas.
Yeah.
But try Philadelphia or Harrisburg.
Okay.
And I was talking with a Penn State alum last weekend, and they said the key is to drive into Happy Valley on Friday night. Don't go in on Saturday. If you go in on Saturday, that 2-lane highway is going to be hell. Drive in on Friday night and try to find accommodations there. And then that makes the entire experience much more enjoyable.
And then bring Pat Smith with you, and you got a good shot to win a game there.
Pat Smith and Kenny Bell.
Hey, and that's so a lot of us after that game are driving back to Harrisburg, and there was a blizzard. Yeah, that was some white knuckling. But the good thing is, I mean, from Nebraska's standpoint, that's not their whiteout game. They got their wish, and they're going to play Oregon at night.
Yeah.
But let's hope that game. I mean, if that game matters, that's a good sign. That is a great sign. If that game matters for both teams.
The best road trip ever was South Bend back in 2000, and half the folks here at the wedding party were part of that road trip with us, and got to reminisce about that a little bit between staying at a Camp KOA, going to Linebackers Bar, closing that thing down, and then the overtime win was pretty incredible. Cranak's been to a hell of a lot. He's been to Virginia Tech in the infamous 2009 game.
Oy.
We've been to the international incident in Ireland the other year. He went to the Cal game. He was in Seattle for the 97 win. He did not make it to Austin in 99 with us. That was my fault, apparently. And I have yet to get him to Iowa City for anything. But UCLA would be cool. Elijah, you went to SC last year. and they did it right. You had great tailgate setups. You had all sorts of places to pregame it. You covered it, and then you had your post game setup. But the campus looked really cool at SC. UCLA, I've driven by it too. It's been years and years and years ago, but it does look cool, even though it is different. It is iconic when you go out there and you see the backdrop. So,
and what's nice for Husker fans is the weather in LA in November sure beats Nebraska's weather in November. So it's a nice little vacation spot. You can't say the same about Penn State. Penn State's going to be brutal in November.
My question is, do visiting teams really ever have much of a presence at a Penn State game? I mean, I think most people understand that it is brutal to get to. There are Nebraska alums and fans all over the country, and those who live in the Iron Belt region up there in the upper Mid-East know, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going there. In California, you've got all the Californians for Nebraska, those prominent alumni groups. Of course, they're going to flock to Pasadena. I think that'll be an incredible scene at the Rose Bowl for Nebraska, whether they played it on a Friday night or a Saturday. But I'm just thinking, has a visiting team ever had a measurable presence at a game in Happy Valley? And I can't think of one where you're going, wow, Penn State fans really sold their tickets and sold their souls.
Never.
And let Ohio State or Pitt fans or Michigan fans or Purdue fans, which aren't very many of, I just don't think that Penn State ever has much of a visitor's presence at a game, and Nebraska probably is as good as it gets just because they travel whenever they can. Yeah. But most of them, I just think, look, it's just too much of a hassle to get there.
Could Husker fans travel out there more than other fans? Because if you look at, if it is a game of substance, as Gary says, a game that matters to both teams, most people wouldn't bet on James Franklin in a moment like that. Big time moment for James Franklin like that. That could mean good things for Nebraska in November if there's pressure on Penn State in that game.
Well, I one takeaway from this conversation is that nobody is excited to go to Maryland.
Uncle Mark will make his way to Maryland with Aunt Mel because there's family out there.
I guess you could do the tourist thing if you wanted to go over to D.C. I think the Ravens are home on that Sunday.
Yeah.
But it's tickets are easy to come by. It's just every time Nebraska plays out there, it's like you have no feel for the game.
Right. Same thing with Rutgers. It's just kind of a their game.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Sharpie. I'm going to switch to some recruiting. What do you think of the continued offers and opportunities for a guy's kid we really like? We love Steve Warren. Braylon Warren keeps getting offer after offer after offer after offer, and he is correct me if I'm wrong, did Ohio State reach out to him as well?
Yeah, there's no offer, but there was communication.
Yeah. So
he is only going to be a junior at Westside. I think Nebraska made their evaluation on him, and you see, well, I think Nebraska wants like bigger quarterbacks, like Trey Taylor, and I know you guys have seen the video. If you see him, if you had a chance to see him this weekend, now he's got to put some weight on, and I mean he's only 15, 16.
Yeah.
He's a legit 6'3", so he's a bigger, taller quarterback. And I think they were, they had good communication with his dad. Kid's a legacy, but he's getting some really good offers. And Nebraska has 2 Omaha quarterbacks that they made their evaluation on, and they decided to go somewhere else. And you kind of wish that you hope that your evaluation of a Dayton and a Trey are on point, and those guys are going to come here and do what you think they're going to do. But I hope Jet and Braylon go to wherever they're going to go. Jet is committed to Iowa State. I hope they ball out and they play well, because that helps the future of development of quarterbacks in this state. But Braylon's going to be a really good player. I think a Mizzou, K-State are some ideal spots for him. But man, he keeps getting these really nice offers. And I don't know if it's schools that are trolling Nebraska, but they just drop an offer, or if they are legit offers of, hey, we want you to come and be a quarterback at blank. But I'll tell you one offer that kind of shows you how good Braylon, they project him to be. I think Jonathan Smith at Michigan State is a really good evaluator of quarterbacks and developer. And when Michigan State offered, I went, okay, which schools are offering these quarterbacks that you consider them to be good development programs for quarterbacks? So we'll see where he goes. But Tom Chattel this morning, the World Herald has a really good article and a good conversation, open conversation with Steve and Braylon, and what Steve's role is, and what Steve's role is, in the guys that he works with that either go to Nebraska or they go somewhere else.
My first thought is that there's a bit of a troll going on. That okay, we're going to come into your backyard and we're going to make our presence known, and we're going to drop at least an inquiry, if not an offer. So we're going to force Nebraska's hand. Does Nebraska want to play cards and say, okay, well, we need to also present an offer to a 27, and then that turns off the kid in Chicago. It says, whoa. We committed to you, and now you're wanting to dance with somebody else. So we're going to start looking around. That's how that game is played. Are you going to blink when somebody comes into your backyard and you've got to try to protect your territory, which then turns off somebody else and say, if you're going to dance with somebody else, so are we. And all of a sudden, however fragile a commitment to a junior to be, that starts to fray a little bit. And that's just part of the game now. And if Nebraska says Trey Taylor is our guy, then Trey Taylor's got to be their guy until he says no, and Nebraska can't get into that troll game.
Yeah, no, and I think we all speculated early, man, Trey Taylor committed, and that's a long way to signing day. I don't think I have any fear whatsoever that Trey Taylor is going to dabble somewhere else. So you have, in your quarterback recruiting is you prioritize the position over the last 3 or 4 recruiting classes, and it's benefited you where you can attract different kind of quarterbacks because of the style of offense you play. So their quarterback recruiting is in a good spot. And down the road, if the state of Nebraska starts producing Power 4 quarterbacks, I think that is a benefit for Nebraska, where you don't have to go so far to find your quarterback. You don't have to go to Georgia. You don't have to go to Chicago. You can get somebody right in your own backyard.
And remember how it all played out with Raiola and Kalen. You're not going to be able to do that every time, where the local kid says, I understand how it's played. I understand why you went after him. I understand that when he committed to Georgia, now you came back to me. Not everybody's going to play nice like that. But I understand, but now that you've offered, I will accept. Yeah. Steve has his son well prepared for all of this, I'm sure. But if Trey Taylor decides to go somewhere, would Warren be as accepting as Danny Kalen was? Maybe he will be, maybe he won't be, but that's the game that is part of recruiting nowadays.
Well, here's the biggest thing of importance is the communication.
Yeah.
We think you're a talented player. We have evaluated you. We have put the work in. Here's where we have you ranked. It ain't personal. Here's who we think's better. Here's where you're at. Here's why we think you're better on our board than X, Y, and Z. Deliver that and then say, this is who we want. We like you as well. Understand that you're a later option. So keep that in mind. If you can handle that, we're okay with reaching out to you if things fall through with our first choice. Are you okay being a backup plan? And that's the conversation you got to have, because, realizing that there are backup plans, there are programs that want Braylon Warren. But if Braylon Warren goes somewhere and commits and stays there, then they've got to move on to number 2 or 3 on their board, or number 4 or 5 on their board. Yeah. So I don't worry about that with Matt Rule and his coaching staff at all. Just being brutally honest.
Yeah, their quarterback room is in a really, really good spot. I think another thing, and you bring up communication. You guys remember the Kalen recruiting 1.0? He went to a camp at Florida State when he was a freshman at Bellevue West, and they offered him. Nebraska didn't know who he was. And then all of a sudden, Nebraska offers as if Florida State offered a kid in our backyard, I guess we got to offer. And then they went, and then Verduzco went to find out who he was. That's not how you do it. But
no, you know who he is, for the love of God.
Yeah. And I think it's important. And you see this with local in-state kids. Nebraska evaluates them early, and then they decide if they're going to make an offer or not. And they're up front with guys of, hey, we don't see you in our plans, or they say, we see you in our plans, and they prioritize you. I mean, just look at the recruitment of Nelson Wheeler, who is a running back at Grand Island, who's going to be a senior at Millard South. He's getting some interesting offers, and Nebraska hasn't slow played him. I think Nebraska's taken their time to evaluate an in-state running back. And look, he goes on an official last week to KU, stops in Lincoln for a workout. I think we're getting close to an offer, and I think it would be a wise offer for Nebraska to offer him out of Millard South. So I think in-state guys, their approach is a little bit different. The communication is much better, and they don't leave you hanging. They don't like, hey, we got this other guy, and you might be an option. They're like, you know what? This is how we see you. This is how we don't see you. Anything we can do for you, best of luck.
Here's the thing that you got to hopefully be right about. When do you get a chance to evaluate a kid? Think about some of the really talented players, and I think of Quincy Enunwa and second Kenny Bell reference, senior film, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ted Gilmore evaluated a ton of guys on their senior film. Matt Rules talked about senior film is when you used to get the offer. Versus seeing a kid too early and making your judgment then before the kid gets better and grows into more of an adult player. So there's that aspect of things where you can't judge and make your ruling too soon. You need to be able to go back and kind of follow a kid's progress as he grows up, gets bigger, stronger, and faster, presumably. But the thing that I really enjoyed about Steve Warren when we've talked to him over the years is how the visit is the fairy tale, day one of camp is reality. Yeah. The recruiting process being that fairy tale, and then it gets very real very quickly about how it's dog eat dog once you step on campus.
And how does the ruling now affect all of this? The settlement finally coming into play July 1 as a deadline. How does all that, and Gary, you're probably more versed about this than anybody on this, but now that Nebraska's gone through this battle of the boneyard, and now you've got the settlement all happening around the same time, July 1 is looming. How does all of that now come into, how does that puzzle start to come together?
That would probably be a great question for Pat Stewart. I mean, it just, I think you're going to see more college programs hire people from the NFL or the NBA. Mm-hmm. Whether they're your head coach, which probably not so much going NFL to college, because I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want that hassle. But in terms of like hiring to be GMs, where they get it. They've had to deal with contracts. They've had to deal with money. They've had to deal with those conversations of, hey, we see you here. We don't see you here. I think that's one thing we're going to start to see. And I think, Nebraska, and we've talked about it a lot, and there's been a lot written. Nebraska's in a really good spot. They've been working on this for a good 12 to 16 months of what this could potentially be, so that they're ready to hit the ground running on July 1. So that they don't get behind and get buried. Now, I don't think this still levels the playing field, but I think if you're prepared and have the right people in place that understand all the intricacies of basically a salary cap, then I think you're going to be in a good spot. But there's a lot of, there's going to be so many questions out there. If I was a high school recruit on, do I get an NIL now? Do I have to wait till I get here? All of that stuff. Damn, it's college athletics is not like it used to be. It changed Friday night forever.
People need to get used to hearing about the College Sports Commission. That is for average Joes who have followed this stuff. College Sports Commission is going to be the pseudo governing body over the next iteration of collegiate sports. And They're going to be looking at NIL deals, over $600, which really surprised me that that's the number. And I think that's the tax number. But to me, there's going to have to be an enforcement arm, perhaps at every institution in some way, or regionally, or within each conference. So it sounds like right now you've got an executive director, Seeley's his last name, who came over from Major League Baseball. But then there's going to be an enforcement arm that's going to look at every NIL deal over $600. That to me sounds like an accounting nightmare. And they think that they're going to review those cases within 24 hours. And then there's a right to appeal. And the process could take 45 days on appeal. I think you're going to have look, if they dismantle the IRS, those guys could probably find jobs in the College Sports Commission, right? And determine whether or not these NIL deals, which are going to go under the umbrella of the university, if they're playing by the rules there, and what rules are there going to be for side deals and, Lincoln parent programs again.
I loved that. The best thing ever was 4th grade lunch, and one of the kids in our class, their parents were Husker parents. So here comes poor old Rod Smith in his foot cast, hopping along to have Val's Pizza with one kid named Lori. And the first time ever that us dudes sat with a girl at lunch, because Rod Smith sat down with the large Vals. The Husker parent program was incredible.
Just to help them get acclimated to life in Lincoln and being away from home. Let's just find them a place at, some place in Southeast Lincoln or in the Lincoln Country Club neighborhood, just to help them feel at home.
Well, I remember shouting, shout out Johnny Clare. Johnny smiling about Turner Gill was I think the Husker family for the Clares. So who would you guys have wanted to host? What player?
Oh, well, there are a couple of guys that I would love to have, Rod Smith would have been one of them.
Reading tea leaves. Sharpie?
Broderick Thomas.
Okay. Sandman was good. Elijah, are we going to go with Richie Incognito today?
So many good options. The Peter brothers, Richie Incognito. I mean, the thing is, it's hard for me to say because I don't know. I don't have kids. I've never had responsibility. I don't know. I don't know what makes for a good person to have around the house and who doesn't. So my favorite from growing up was always Rex Burkhead. So we'll go with Rex Burkhead.
Okay. Rexy. There we go. We'll wind down a Sunday live of the Average Joe Sports Show. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and also on Twitter, AJ Sports Radio. Be safe.
We do need to quickly bring up AJ Ferrari coming off to Husker Wrestling.
Yes.
What a pickup for Mark Manning that is. He's got an outspoken nature. He's rambunctious, but likely either 197 or heavyweight for Mark Manning. Just got himself a big piece, a guy who's been a national runner-up. He's been a national champion. That's a huge pickup for Mark Manning to shore up your top ranks of the Husker wrestling program.
What do they have? 6 All-Americans that are returning for next year? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That maybe you start thinking about moving the Iowa-Nebraska duel from the John Cook Arena in the Devaney Center to PBA, because that will have some juice to it definitely now.
That'd be great.
That's a great pickup for them because that gives them at least All-America points at one of the upper weight classes. That's always been kind of a weakness of Nebraska wrestling since the Tully Thompson, Joe Malachek days. I'm not going to go all the way back to Gary Albright, but Nebraska's
most back hair I've ever seen on one individual ever.
Horrible.
Okay.
He wrestled with a sweater.
That's awful.
Yeah.
You think there's any polling?
So the only reason I know that, because I never saw him wrestle at Nebraska, but when I was in school and he came back, remember he went and wrestled professionally, and so he's over in Japan and he was a legend. He came back to finish his degree This is, I don't know, 95, 96, and it's the late Gary Albright, by the way. He sat in front of me in a class, and all I know is that I was afraid that I was going to get attacked by all this ball of hair, because he would always wear tank tops. Like even in the winter, he'd wear a jacket, then he'd take it off. And I mean, he was jacked, but he had so much hair coming out of his back. I was like, holy crap. And I didn't know who he was until someone said, oh yeah, he wrestled at Nebraska. He was like a legend. And now he's a pro wrestler. And so I was like, one day I'm going to talk to him about it. Super, super nice guy.
Maybe he had a support animal on his back. Who knows?
Could be. But don't you guys also think it's not only a win for Mark and adding to his roster for the upcoming year, but isn't it a win for, I don't know, 1890?
Oh, big time. Big time. And listen, you mentioned in the past, Gary, that Nebraska needs to be able to have more options, more wells to get water from. And there's a group of folks that are really supportive of Nebraska wrestling. 1890 for sure, but there's folks that give to 1890 that are major players in the cattle industry that are going to try and make sure Nebraska wrestling's here to stay. And you've got the coach, you've got the coaching staff, and you've got 25 years of just continued excellence with Mark Manning. But wrestling's in a good spot when it comes to their donors, I think.
They're loyal. They've been loyal for a long time. They've been loyal since they were gathering at the Misty Isles on folding chairs, and they've only gotten stronger and more loyal through Mark Manning's tenure. It's a great pickup. The unfortunate thing is Penn State is so far ahead of everybody else that to me, Nebraska is just trying to solidify its place as second best, unfortunately, because that's how far ahead Penn State is. But look, it's great. He has a bit of a controversial past.
Yeah.
Does AJ Ferrari? And he's been at this will be his fourth school. I think he was at Iowa for a cup of coffee, wasn't he? And then he went to Oklahoma State, Cal Bakersfield the last couple of years. Yeah. So if he feels like Nebraska is a place where he can grow up and mature in Nebraska, and Mark Manning talked about it a lot. I want guys who want to be here and that we can develop our guys through our program. Well, this is going a little bit to an off-ramp to bring him in. But that's the way the game is played. Nebraska's not doing wholesale changes. They found a guy that wants to come here. Maybe it's an opportunity for Mark Manning to have the kind of impact on his life personally and not just what he can do on the mat, because we've seen what Mark Manning has done with impacting student athletes' lives and making them better. I think we all respect him for that. And maybe that's what AJ Ferrari sees as his opportunity at Nebraska. I can wrestle at a high level, but Mark Manning's going to make me a better man. And I'm all for it.
And I think they might make him a better wrestler. I think Brian Snyder probably deserves a lot of credit for also being involved in this recruitment.
We'll holler next time with the Sunday Live Average Joe Sports Show. Elijah, get safely back to Lincoln, brother. Appreciate you locking in here on a
Are
Sunday
you really
show.
working a game today?
No.
Okay.
So my mic cut out there. The umpiring committee heard I was at a bachelor party in Kansas City. And they went, we should find somebody else for that game tomorrow.
Just aim for the middle ball when calling balls and strikes. Sharpie, appreciate you, dude.
Thanks, guys. Safe travels back, both to you, Elijah, from Kansas City, and you from San Francisco. And say hello to Snoop for me.
We'll see. He's performing in Vegas tonight, so there is some question to the authenticity by Nate the Great. If that is Snoop, I think it is. So we'll just have to walk by his room and, check out if it is Snoop or not. So Billy D.
So Snoop played the lounge at the hotel that Schmidt's staying at right now.
No.
And I think, look, for somebody who has never been to Las Vegas, Schmidt, which is still stuns me to this day that you've never been to Vegas.
We'll fix that.
Okay, I understand that. But if you were able to make your first trip to Las Vegas as part of Snoop's entourage, it would be the absolute ultimate trip to Vegas.
Yeah. That'd be hilarious. I'm sure
It would also be unlikely, but nevertheless fun to think about.
Hey, do you guys know that the Big 12 Media Days start 1 month from today?
Oh, really? Big 12 does? I didn't know that. Snoop may reconfigure my nebulizer.
Hey, one other thing about which still is crazy. I'm glad you brought it up, Bill, about Schmidt never being to Vegas. You know who also might not go to Vegas? Dylan Raiola.
Wow.
We can't. He's got to be
because
21.
he's not 21. He would have to pull an Ashton Genty.
Ashton Genty had to do his own press conference at a different hotel in Vegas that was allowed under 21s, and yeah, that was a whole thing.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Like and subscribe YouTube channel with the Average Joe Sports Show, and find Gary with Gary and Matt 6 to 10 on 1620 The Zone weekdays, and find us with the Average Joe Sports Show 4 to 6 weekdays as well. Bill Doleman, Gary Sharp, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. We'll talk to you next time with the Average Joe Sports Show Sunday Live. Thanks for tuning in.